We can get started and I'll share when he can come up.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for attending January 19th, 2024, our first meeting of the new year. A wonderful, warm, cold January day. Today we have Brady Easterly. He's supervisor of safety and health at the UA Safe State program. He's going to do a presentation today on impact of noise. Brady.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate everybody showing up. A little bit more like old home week as it was. We've got the honor of Mr. John Plexi attending. Long-standing faithful servant of the ASSP. So anyway, we're going to talk about noise today. And we will talk about the OSHA stuff a bit, but this is kind of more of the industrial hygienist perspective on noise. Some of the things I learned back in the day when I was a student at the Jimmy and Burns School of Industrial Hygiene. Of course, that was in the 80s, so nobody remembers the Jimmy and Burns School of Industrial Hygiene, otherwise known as the University of Alabama Birmingham Industrial Hygiene Program of School of Public Health. But noise is a topic that everybody has to deal with. A lot of people don't realize they do. It's like we'll put a pair of earplugs in and we're good to go. Not exactly. There's a little bit more science. There's a little bit more medicine to it. And we'll kind of try to make that simple because it's not a complicated subject. Definition of noise. Any acoustical phenomenon that causes an unpleasant or disturbing sensation. That can be in the eye of the beholder depending on your taste in music. But when we get into things, we tend to talk about intensity levels. You see a lot of musicians, a lot of the rockers from the day, and you'll see where they are playing now with hearing protection because they've lost hearing, they've got tinnitus, they've got something that's affecting them. And to continue their career, they have to protect the hearing they've got. And that's part of what we'll be emphasizing too, is the need to protect. How affects noise? Noise induced hearing loss. And that's basically where you get a loss of hearing over time. When you do the audiogram and the level that you can detect the tone has gone higher and higher. So you look at this, it's frequency specific, and you lose it over time. This is usually a very gradual thing. It's usually gradual enough that you don't even realize it's happening. TV isn't loud, it used to be. I don't know why everybody around me is whispering. They don't want to hear things. No, you've lost hearing. And this is something you're going to find in just about every industrial area. Now, the other thing you get with this is tinnitus. I've got tinnitus, and I've got tinnitus from a sinus infection, not from a noise exposure. I go into places, but I don't stay there. And when I do go in, I've got my hearing protection. But, this is a particularly annoying thing because 24/7, you've got this going on in your head. So people tend to downplay this, but they shouldn't. It's like one of those things. Well, it's an avoidable one of those things. It also has a desk where it increases stress levels. Just this irritation, where noise just kind of gives you tremors, gives you just an unsteady feeling. It's a stressor. Other things at work, we know what causes us to work with stress. This can be one of it. So on top of, your supervisors giving you fits or making more demands, more things about doing more with less people to do the same amount of work, all those things, this is one more thing. And due to those same stressors, it has an effect on cardiovascular disease. Now, I'm not going to say that heart disease is what I'm worrying about from this. There's usually a lot of other factors that apply to that. But, it all plays into it. It has a bigger impact on you than just, you get old, you lose your hearing. No, not necessarily. You usually hearing the older you get based on your exposures. And it can be work related, it can be recreational, That dirt bike I had when I was a teenager was a lot louder than you think. Shotgun, all these things I used to do as a teenager. And really apparently didn't have any big effect on my hearing, but all that can play into it. I mean, you can lose your hearing just like that. I mean, you have an explosion type thing, you can totally lose your hearing because that impact is enough just to totally take it out. Now, the louder, the worse it is, the shorter the term and recovery. We'll talk about it. Where are we without OSHA? Basically, noise is regulated under 1910-95. This is one of the oldest OSHA standards. It was created before I got into graduate school. So when I'm in college, right. Back then they were, monitoring the noise for a chisel. But anyway, you were part of the group. So, but literally, the person within OSHA that was responsible for creating the standard, she was so upset about standard, she quit. So let's be the standard, but it is what we've got. We've had it since the mid-80s. Kicks in with an action level of 85 decibels. At that point, you're supposed to have a program, you're supposed to do audiograms, you're supposed to be training, all for hearing protection. A lot of that really doesn't protect the block. At 90, you gotta do all that and require hearing protection to look at engineering controls. And really the engineering controls and hearing protection is where the meat of the matter is. Then training, offering hearing protection, audiometric engineering controls. We'll talk about these things. But the thing we also have to realize too is you start losing hearing at 80 according to the literature. At 80, you don't have to do anything. You don't even have a blip that we've got things going on. But that's where you get into things. First thing we do is we do an assessment of your facility. We want to see what your employee exposures are. And we kind of want to do that for air and everything else. But basically, you pick out people with noise exposures. And I hate to tell you, pretty much everybody there has got one. And you prioritize, and a lot of times people, they're on the low edge of the risk assessment, don't get monitored, but they need to be. So this is a lot of things you want to do subsequently. And basically, you put a microphone here. Back in the day, there was a dosimeter that went on your belt. There's a wired microphone here. Now the device is pretty much small enough. It goes right there. It talks to our phones and computers. It does all that good stuff. But it's still the measuring. Now, what most people do not know is, we're using a dosimeter. We're not measuring decibels, we're measuring dose. And the OSHA PL is not 90 decibels. That's what it translates to for 8 hours. But the personal exposure, PL, personal permissible exposure limit for noise is 100% dose. The action level is 50% dose. And this is the math using the OSHA formula. And the OSHA formula is based on a 5 decibel exchange rate. Now that is reflective of how we hear. Engineering physics of noise is actually a 3 decibel exchange rate. So when you look at OSHA doctrine, it says an effective engineering control is measured by 3 decibel reduction. That's what it's talking about. And this goes back to the science, all the things that is industrial hygiene. Which as older I get, I don't know whether people even know what industrial hygiene is. I did a presentation down at the governor's conference where I started off by putting a pump on somebody, starting it and saying, okay, that's all you need to know. And I said, not really, and spent an hour talking about basics of industrial hygiene, but we've gotten to the point where industrial hygiene is not really being reviewed as a profession, but I was told it was. And your responsibilities has become a technician type thing. And that is a total misunderstanding of what it does and what its value is, and the things you have to use as a safety professional to be able to adequately interact in this world. Because more and more, not what that was, not 35 years ago, but it's a consulting business. I mean, my first job was with a paper company, and I was stationed at a place, but I mean, you might have been the corporate industrial hygienist or the corporate industrial hygiene staff, but you were an internal consultant. That's what you're doing, because you were going to a different plant every week and dealing with their issues. And when basically they're like, hi, we'd like you to do this for the Eastern Seaboard, which means you're responsible for 247 plants. It's like, I was young, but I wasn't that young. But that's what you deal with. And, we've got the same thing in safety, with consultants and people moving around. But when you look at this, 100% doses PL is 90 decibels. Okay, 5 decibels more isn't much, is it? Well, it's doubling, it's 200%. 100 is 4%, 400%. It goes from there. And literally, by the time you get to 115 decibels, you can be exposed to that for 15 minutes and you're over the PL. I've had one place that I monitored that was 118 decibels as an 8-hour time weighted average. It was that constantly. You're not really going to be good there for 15 minutes. This is very extreme noise. You can lose your noise hearing totally. So if you don't really have a really effective program going on to reduce this by engineering, you're going to be in trouble. But when you get to 115 decibels, hearing protection isn't going to take you down below. Yeah. You get a pair of phone plugs, you got to fit them right, all that stuff. It's got 29 dBA. Subtract 7 divided by 2, that's 11 decibels. Add a pair of earmuffs on that, by definition, that takes off 5, so that's 16. So if you're at 115 decibels, that's going to take you down to 100. So you're not even close to where you need to be. Now, that's something you see very, very, very rarely. It also makes the point, you can't go out. This is loud. We're going to put them in a pair of earmuffs. It may not do what you need to do. So you really need to look at your exposures. You need to look at how many people you have exposed, different things along those lines. Now, this isn't what we deal with in most cases. What we're dealing with is somewhere between 90 and 100 is an 8-hour time weighted average. And the OSHA standard is based on an 8-hour exposure, or however long you work, but it's based on daily shift. So anyway, taking the calculation, which is the monitored dose divided by time monitored, and we can go through this. Anybody wants to get into the details? Log 16.61 plus or minus 90. This is what we get. 8 hours. 100% dose is 90 decibels. For 9 hours, it's 89.2. Up to 12 hours, where it's 87. A lot of people do not think much about it. They think linear. This is logarithmic. So when you're looking at the difference between 90 and 87, when you look at exposures with employees being, okay, we've got somebody at 93. That's not much over the PL. Actually is. So we have to look at that. We have to look at that risk of hearing. There's the calculation. Annual training you do. What's the effect of noise on hearing? We kind of talked about that a little bit. The purpose of the hearing protection. It is to reduce the exposure. I just talked about the OSHA formula, how you measure the effectiveness of it. But you've got different types of hearing protection. You've got phone plugs, you've got muffs, you've got inserts. And right now we're seeing a lot of difference in the different types of inserts. 3M has a device called the EAR. We've got one. And literally what you see is what works for the individual. I mean, there was a pair of plugs I've used for years. And it gave me, actual attenuation of 17 decibels. There was another pair that I had that looked like a mushroom cap type thing. I popped it in, and it gave me an actual attenuation of 33. That's a lot better than what product says. Now that's for me. It might not be that for Tom. You know, that's kind of the thing where we almost, the factors we look at for fit testing respirators, that science is there for hearing protection. And like I said, we've got one of those. It's something I'm wanting to put out in the field more. We used it more for training, different things. Part of the problem is the kind of pro earplugs and getting and keeping those, which isn't that difficult, but you know. But that's something, you know, Tom, I think we need to be doing in the field, more of a service to our clients when we do this type of thing, rather than just, hi, here's what your number is, you need to do something. And we try to tell everybody what they're doing. But then we get into the purpose of the audiometric testing. Purpose of audiometric testing is to go from a baseline and track how much hearing you're losing every year. You know, at 3 frequencies. And again, it's compared to what your hearing was when you started. Well, problem I find with this is when I review audiograms, you end up almost renewing or revising the baseline every year, because you will have some improvement in hearing or some change that basically invalidates the previous audiogram. I mean, if you've lost hearing, you're not going to regain it. So when you go back and you find an improvement at 3,000 hertz, there's something going on with the test. And usually what the problem with the test is you haven't had 14 hours of quiet time prior to the test. That's pretty much one of the requirements. A lot of times that is done by earplugs. Well, if your earplugs aren't fitted right, you're not going to get that level of protection. If you blasted out the stereo coming in the morning, you're not going to get the protection. So you rely a lot on the audiograms, but you may not be getting good for the audiograms. And you know, I'm not trying to throw the audiometric companies under the bus. I'm just saying the reality of what you get into when you look in the field day after day at the way people are wearing hearing protection. If you look at what they're doing before the audiograms, how they're scheduled, what they're doing, interferences. I mean, you bring a band up and there may be things in the immediate area that affects the ability for that band to give you the quietness area, the voice that you need. I mean, facility I started off, we had a chipper that ran at 125 decibels. And it was hard to find a lot of places anywhere that wasn't affected by that. So just a point. Hearing protection. Different types. We've got foam plugs, inserts, and muffs. Basically, you're comparing the higher the NRR on the box, the better protection. Now, there's a long process for developing NRRs that's basically performed by testing laboratories. Back in the day, it got to where there was a handful doing it. I really don't know right now. But when you look at the NRR, the OSHA protocol is to take the NRR, track 7 off of it. That's basically the rating between A scale, B scale, and C scale. You know, when you look at noise, you got dBA, you got dBB, you got dBc. That kind of takes across there and takes it out. There's a safety factor. OSHA says divide by 2. Okay, so thus before, insert something in our R29, track 7, you get 22, divide by 2, you got 11. You know, also by OSHA do take is you take earmuffs and put it on top of it, again adding 5 decibel to protection. All this is depending on how you use them, how you fit them, and like with the earmuffs. I mean, back when we first, or when I started, you know, Betsy Cadet Alpha earmuff is in the teens for an RR. Now you can get different models, most of them are 29. So that's improved a lot. So, you know, your selection of your plugs, your selection of your earmuffs are important. And the thing with the foam plugs you have to realize is that's all based on fit. You need to roll those things until you break the coefficient of expansion. Extend the ear, insert, hold, and wait for that to pop. You should hear it literally filling the cabin. If you take it out before that, it's just going to expand out the ear. So when I go into facilities, fully half the people you can see half an inch of yellow sticking out from 30 yards. If you see that, they're not fitted properly. So you're depending on that. Second thing about foam plugs is your hands need to be clean when you do this inserting. Middle ear infections are caused a lot by debris getting in there, irritating the space and creating an infection. Now, the inserts are basically plastic elastomeric. They can be cleaned, they can be reused. To me, they're easier to fit. So you got that balance in what you select in terms of NRR rating, higher for foam, other ones, how they fit, different things like that. So it's something you've got to determine when you make your selection, what PPE you're using. This is what we're talking about. Walk through a plant. Do you see it like that, or do you see it where you've literally got to go up and move your hair, please, so I can look in your ear? Very, very rarely do I have to get. I talk. Yeah, they're fitted right. Don't get that very often. These are the practical things. I mean, more and more you go into a plant and their program's based on hearing protection. Okay, what are you using? Are they using it? Are they wearing it all the time? How is it fitted? What's the condition? All those things. And part of this is your training. Do not run them through OSHA sets. They don't care what OSHA says. You want it to have meaning to them, about their hearing, their thing. Because the stories where you're talking to them about, you went on vacation, you came back, you got back, and it's like, why is the TV so loud? Well, you had some recovery. Or, as time goes along, you can't hear your grandkids, you can't hear your wife, you can't hear all these things. You may be fine with not being able to hear me talk, but usually they want to hear the grandkids talk. So you have to make it personal. What is it about them? What is it about their life? Because it's like, OSHA's going to come in and do this to us if you don't wear your hearing protection properly. It doesn't cover a lot of sway. They don't care what the penalty is. The only time I ever seen anybody care about what the penalty is, if in some way it affects their bonus. Now, usually there's other things that affect it, not this. Here's the inserts. And again, this is very similar to what that is what I wore. And there's nothing wrong with them. Like I said, the one you see that's a cat mushroom thing is what I've got now. Now, I'm not advocating that one. You do the type of testing we're talking about for the EAR.
You remember the testing?
Sir.
You remember the testing when we did that machine? Those were upper 19, 18 to 22. With the ones you use today, we got over 40.
With me, I got 17 using those. When I put in the ones we're talking about, I got 33. And that was
where we did 41 up to 41 on it. So
that wasn't me.
Where we did, I got 41. So you can see how good, if they fit in here, the noise reduction rating can be.
Yeah, the problem about what we're talking about with this is it's a 3M product and it affects 3M earplugs. And of course, more and more we're getting to the point where everything's owned by 3M. So it may not be an issue. We're finding that as you actually go out and buy equipment, these companies have all been bought by the same people. 3M seems to be the one who's buying most of this. Oh, there they are. Fuzzy, but that's what you find in my bag when I go out. Phone plugs have really come along. A lot of advancements. This is what you get with an audiogram. As you go along, you look and right ear, left ear, you've got your baseline somewhere. You see here, we've got a big notch of 4,000. That's what we call the industrial notch. Because when you do a frequency analysis, and this is all funny, everything with noise, when you break it down, you got frequency components. It's not just how loud it is, it's how loud it is at each frequency. And that can play an impact on designing engineering controls, of what works, what doesn't, type of materials. But you know, you get through here and then you get 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, 2, 3, and 4 is really what you're looking with those audiograms. And you know, you look at the hearing as it goes down, follows the pattern. But you know, the thing is, looking at what the original one is, how much is that loss compared to your first one to your baseline? And again, what I'm saying about we find baselines being routinely revised because at one of these numbers, there's an improvement, and there shouldn't be. And I personally think it's due to lack of quiet time before the audiograms perform. Anyway. This is the process. I run you through. Can you hear this? Can you not? Is at a given frequency, they increase the volume down, up, etc. So when you can detect it, they run that through. Based on that, you know, you get the results.
Brandon, can I ask a good question?
Mm-hmm.
You did your comment a minute ago that the input would be caused from the lack of quiet time prior to test.
The original. Yeah, I mean, the baseline there has been negatively impacted by not having quiet time. And there's been an improvement in that. That's what we're talking about. The bottom line is you need a really quiet environment to do the test, and you basically need your hearing to be as pristine as it's going to be when you do the test. Now, you're not going to be able to do these with the man getting there at 7 o'clock on Monday morning. We're both been off all weekend to do these. So there's going to be exposure. And, you know, per policy is like use the hearing protection. Even if you're in a job that doesn't require hearing protection, you know, your exposure is 87 decibels. We give you hearing protection, but you don't have to wear it. You want it to be worn on the day of the audio, from the beginning of the shift till when the day before they show up, and probably want to do it that day too.
So I was just gonna say, experience just recently, young man about 22, just starting the job, straight zeros all the way across. That's the first time I've ever seen that.
Should be that way.
Yeah.
Don't see it a lot because years ago I was doing a noise survey someplace. And the guy one of the guys I was monitoring was really into this. And he was really curious about my sound level meter. Turns out his car was a station wagon thing, and basically he had speakers all in it the size of that table. It's like, can you go out and tell me how loud my speakers are? I don't think his primary problem was in that plane. I mean, so you deal with that. I mean, wherever you get, wherever affects your hearing. Same is true for you. Audiogram. You want all employees over the action level to be included. You have to do this every year. You compare it to a baseline that was taken when they first got there. Basically, you need to do this baseline within 6 months of their initial hire, or if they're being required to wear hearing protection, even if they're not in a job that requires hearing protection, you can have up to a year to do it. Then basically each year when you do the audiogram, you are comparing. You're looking for hearing loss. You're looking to track and measure hearing loss. This is one of the things where we're actually looking at the impact on the individual's health. We do fit testing for respirators, different things along those lines. We're not really measuring their health. There are some protocols we can do at times, like blood leads, chest x-rays, things like that. But this is one thing we're actually looking at affects their actual hearing, which is their health. Action is required when you have a standard threshold shift, which is where basically an average loss of 10 decibels over 3 frequencies. We're talking 2, 3, 4,000 hertz. To get a 10 decibel loss, that's a lot. Here again, you need H hours of quiet time. So much for spell check. And that's not right. You gotta have 14 hours of quiet time before It's the initial audiogram in a van, or you take them to the doctor's office, how are you doing that? I mean, we got a lot of small employers out in rural areas, they've just arranged for the local MD to do it. If the guy's not really into occupational medicine, I don't know how the quality of those would be. So you have to check those. Okay. Test situation. This is what you get with noise. I mean, noise is a sine wave. The higher that sine wave is, the more the intensity is. The more of those waves you've got, the higher the frequency is. And with this with hearing, that's what you're looking at. Those are higher and more frequent as opposed to what we had before. And just looking at an analysis like that, they'll tell me, you're a higher frequency. So things you don't usually encounter in industry, but the loudness, measure of loudness is gone. When you look at doing engineering controls, I mean, a lot of times we're putting up, noise is like radiation, time, distance, shielding. The further you are from the source, lower it's going to be. Amount of time you're exposed to it affects your exposure, and then shielding. And with noise, we're looking at the materials, and one of the components of this is building barriers and building things along the lines where it stops the noise and protects. Here's the source we're looking to protect against. And that's a lot of what you do when you do a noise survey, is you're not only just looking at what the employee's exposure is, you're finding the sources, what's affecting its noise, and how are we going to control it. I mean, I did a place a few weeks back, I went into a few months back, and literally they had one area they were concerned about. They had 4 operations there. Basically, they need to isolate each operation. And one of them basically had a ventilation fan down there. So, you need to put a box around it. But when you are putting enclosures around fans, motors, anything like that, you need to account for heat buildup. You need a tortuous path to basically allow the heat to get out of there, because you don't really want to burn up the motor that's on the equipment. So you have to take that into effect. But usually with these things, you have a double wall constriction. Basically, the sine waves hit the first one, it decreases, and by the time it hits the second one, it's gone. That's its purpose. You don't want it going through the other side. That may not be totally the case. It depends on the intensity, it depends on other things. You can put material on the interior to further dampen it, but usually what you're looking at is you want there to be an airway in there where noise is not moving through the material. It's like a lot of this is, instead of having a really big concrete wall, hey, we can have a smaller wood construction hitting the first wall, get through the second one. It's cheaper, easier, and takes different things. And there are different things you can do. Talk to your employees, see what they say about it. One of my favorite stories is I was out at a plant. Plant manager was an engineer, and I'm an industrial hygienist. And basically, there's a vibrator on a train making a huge amount of noise. So, the engineer and the industrial hygienist are getting ready to build something beautiful. It's going to be in the way, it's going to cost money, but we like projects. Okay, the employee is a guy named Bubba. That's the only thing I know in buying. Yes, that's his name. And he's like, guys, can't we just take those controls and put them over here in this room? Yeah. So maintenance had that done for about $50. And before I left that day, as opposed to plans, construction, something in the way. Now, let's face it, this went into the break time area. It's heated, it was air conditioning, there was a table and a chair there. So Bubba had his benefits too, and we're good with that. But, we were following things. A lot of times you can find out from your people. Tell me about this, what do you do? So before you just start designing things, see what their input is. Forget the ventilation. This may be a hot process, but we don't usually like canopy hoods. But from a noise perspective, we've got barriers between different areas and a barrier in front from wherever it's going. This is just kind of showing the principle about isolating procedures. This kind of goes to what I was talking about. This looks pretty robotic. There might be little sections in there. A lot of times you're just sharing the noise and you want to isolate that. Especially we've got certain equipment that's noisy and you got people burning and different things along those. Not this, but the principle. I mean, I've got an operation right now where we got mechanical power presses making nice noise. Boom, 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 you know, there's several of them around. And we've got barriers basically isolating them from the rest of the plant. But we've got the employee right there at the plant. So basically, we're looking at something like this. Has some vision, so some acrylic plexiglass, something along those lines. And but it basically gives him a phone booth effect and protects his hearing when he's got to be there at that machine. So you look at those things. You get things that are vibratory. A lot of times you put things in to isolate them, you know, cut down the noise being propagated through the machinery or through the concrete. See things like this. Matter of fact, this looks a lot like one place I have worked with. It's not, but you know, you're isolating areas. This type of thing is built and sold for this. A lot of times in practicality, what you find out is it doesn't last that long. It breaks down, it wears, it may not stay closed. People are coming and going, and it affects it. So, you know, a lot of times it's going to be a maintenance issue. So long-term design, short-term design. These type of materials. Again, these things are sold. There are barriers you put in up different areas. A lot of times that's not going to do a lot. You know, it just depends. You have to look at the materials. You got to look at your situation and what you need. Again, time distance shielding. Noise tends to be ignored. Has more impact than people think. It can be controlled. It requires planning. It looks at placement of equipment. And again, there's 40 million people in the United States with a noise-induced hearing loss. That's the data. But again, planning. A lot of times, we're going to do this, and we're putting this in. This is our design for protective production. Okay. You put it in a corner. You put it against a wall. You put it too close to each other. I mean, equipment placement is critical. Little materials is critical. It can affect safety. I mean, the planning on where you place equipment is a critical need. And I mean, we talk about ASSP standards, and basically they require that you do a hazard assessment, JHA, whatever. A lot of what you're really looking at is the equipment you're getting, how loud it is, how to do this, how to do that. And you need to plan on that when you're designing this new upgrade or this production change. And that usually doesn't get done. And that's not just noise. It can be any industrial hygiene issue. It can be safety issues. I mean, I have seen some shutdowns where what they're doing to try to get into to do maintenance on some piece of machinery, they do not have room to get the equipment in there to do the servicing on it. And that's all part of the plan. And that's anything to do. Slide or something. A lot of people wait to just show up. I'll get back to that. It talked about hearing itself. This is how we hear. Noise comes in through the auditory canal. It is noise. Oncophonalius stapes, all that stuff, remember from third grade. Then it goes to the cochlea, and then from the cochlea it's transmitted from the cochlear nerve, cranial nerve, A to the brain. Now, where you get your hearing loss is principally right here in the cochlea. You have something there called hair cells. And basically in the hair cells, they are in this curve and they're aligned by frequency. And basically they go back and forth and this, and that's how you communicate noise. Georgia will do a lot better job on this, but hang up here. Anyway. When you get that impact, okay? They can all be squished down, an explosion, and you just lose it. And whatever frequency you're exposed to, you lose at that frequency. For noise induced hearing loss, you've got thicker grass. This is what I was told years ago, thicker grass just floating out there. Okay, you got the noise you're getting just constantly from machinery. It's whether it's 87 or 92, you know, it's just like that sling blade going back and cutting the top off. And it's doing it day by day. And the louder the noise is, the more they're getting uptime. So that's how you're losing hearing. And this is why we have to look at frequencies, and hearing protection really does it across frequencies. But, you know, the intensity too. So, you know, this is the one thing that really had an impact with on the roads back in 1989 was that discussion of that. Things about noise, power, other things along those lines, I'm not talking about because it's painful. Nobody really wants to know about it. But anyway, this is us, you know, if you need help with noise, we can come in and help you. This is what we do. We do the noise monitoring, tell you what the exposure is, but if you actually need help, you know, just engineering aspects, we come in, provides assistance with that. All this is at your request, we're professional, we're confidential. And that's me. I think everybody's got that contact. So anyway, I have no time. We'll deal what time it is. So have to watch. Any questions? Anything anybody wants to talk about? Have a question? Is that chance? Check the chat.
I have a question. Are you aware of any resources for like building shielding and the type of materials that would reduce decibels? I guess only the material that would be used, but also in combination of those materials.
There is material out there in the literature that talks about things in terms of material and frequency. Then a lot of times what you get into is really dealing with a vendor, you know, about what is commercially available. But a lot of it is really kind of straightforward. I mean, concrete, wood, you know, those type of things. It doesn't have to be that complicated. Now, you get into buying materials, you know, it can be. And when I say that, what I have seen over time has to do, if you're in like a lab space, hey, this works great. If you're in an industrial environment, it's not going to hold up too well. And just the coming and the going and this type of thing. You know, the picture I showed you, the stuff with different hanging materials. I've got clients got that stuff everywhere. They didn't talk to me about it. They just did it. It works fine. But they've had it for 2 years. They're coming through this here. That's basically a Velcro ceiling, and that's not shutting. They had problems in getting it installed where it did properly, those type of things. So there's a wear factor that I've seen with that. A lot of times, what I tell people is, what I see the value of ASSP being, resources you can talk to. I mean, if you've got another company or plant that's done this, you know, see what they've got to say. See what Tom Rock got to say about it. There's no perfect answer to all this stuff. I mean, because usually, quote, a plant engineer I knew 40 years ago, you know, hurricane comes through, blows this place down, and I start off, hey, as long as everybody gets hurt, we're in good shape. But you know, retrofitting, easier said.
You know about noise canceling stuff. I mean, it seems like we ought to be, if it's actually noise canceling, we ought to be getting better with hearing protection now. We ought to be able to put on a pair of earmuffs and go into any environment and close it, you know, cancel that noise.
In theory,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, we're talking about for hearing protection. I think the hearing protection we've got works fine. So, you know, I think hearing canceling can work. I just think there's more gyrations, adjustments you have to make with it to get it work. I mean, I've got a pair of them sitting somewhere in my desk that I've never used. So $300 for a pair of noise canceling, where you're gonna pay 88 cents. Yeah, how many of these do you have? And you got the this factor, but I don't know if you get any real benefit to it. Now, I am not an expert on noise canceling. There's a lot of stuff out there that literally says you should be able to do this and counter about noise in the environment. That tends to work well in a lab. I don't know how well it works.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about noise canceling. I've got headphones that I wear at my house. My wife can whisper and it goes right through those things. It does not cancel all the noise. And I'm not saying that I'm trying. I'm just letting you know, certain noises.
Different frequency.
It's that you're attuned to that noise. Again, I'm not going to say I'm an expert on noise canceling. Like I said, I've got a pair in my desk. I've never tried to use it. I mean, the pair I can't work for is fine for noise. I think what we got out there as a product works fine for it. It's just understanding what your exposure is and how you have to use it and selecting what you got and understanding the limitations. If you're in the low 90s and you've got people affected where hearing protection, it will do its job. If you get over 100, not so much. And then it's like anything, you're relying on people. Are they going to wear it? Are they going to wear it all the time? Are they going to wear it wrong? What we select? All those things. Well, thank you everyone for coming. I hope you found this useful. This is kind of what I think we do when we're out consulting. Yeah. This is what we try to convey to our clients. So, thank you. And with that, Tom.
But I know you got like only 15 or 20 of those, and you know where my stash is, so you can take one anytime you want. So,
We'll just put one of the previous pictures in me getting the coveted mug.
Food in the back, we got beef, turkey, and ham. So if you want to go grab. Absolutely. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wearing your hearing protection correctly, see what happens. Oh, you listen.
Yeah, we love you and we thank you for all of the great things that you do for us. That's far beyond our deserving. Lord, we just thank you for that. We ask that you continue to enable us to help others. After all, it's all about love. We just ask that you bless us fruit of our body, strengthen us, keep us safe in all the midst of these.
Thanks, Bob. Well, my purple to celebrate today. Mardi Gras coming up, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There's huge celebrations in Mobile right now. Found it out yesterday when down in pretty last night, pretty today, pretty tomorrow, and Sunday. Any announcements?
14th of March.
Yeah.
You want to know?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm gonna.
If y'all remember the Central Alabama Construction Safety.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, and I want to just go ahead and say there's like already about 50 Hispanic. And we had a backlog of people that we sent through an email. There are about 120 people already registered. So we can probably have up to 300, 350. So not too late, but it's a great conference. OSHA really likes it and they use it sometimes to mitigate problems and help get things with about PPE. We've got a pretty good agenda. If you go to the Detail Summit website, it'll be.
Great. Hear about it. Okay. Hey, we're gonna go over it out, right? So we plug it in, all right? You have vibration equipment, right? Light line, everything going over, you next to a railroad track, the building vibrates. There's 3 wires on the hot neutral and ground. The foundation is ground through the tightly fit, ground wire, so it can come loose, especially if I got vibration. Like a shaker table, conveyor, overhead crane, and move that vibration. It can't come loose if you lose ground. So one of the proactive safety assessments should every hour, that's what you should have some talk about. We find that every common issue in facility, especially there's a lot of vibration around it. Most days, I'm covering all our local active sections, they have a meeting next Friday. It's an AID one technology course in Montgomery. I'm presenting on walking services, the same morning presentation I did here. So if you want to come, great. I'll be there presenting them. Next month, we're going to be at Jacksonville State University. We won't be here at this facility, so we'll be at JSU. Jordan has invited us down. She gave us a place to call for lunch, so we'll provide lunch. So far, I know quite a few members from this chapter and sections will be going to JSU, so your security will be a big amount of money for us.
Yeah, we told him to stay away.
Yes. Basically, the park at Barrel Hall or overflow here. We're gonna post a map of their university on our website that I emailed you today.
Oh, you did? I
Yeah,
haven't seen it
post
yet.
it on our website so people can see, they can download it. We'll also include it in the invite when we send it out next month. So we can find or get lost on campus, whatever the case may
Do
be.
I need to help with registration or? Yeah.
It's not gonna be our normal registration process.
No. Well,
Are you trading for the meeting or for the
Yes,
room?
it's still the same registration.
okay,
You'll let me know how many JSU students are in,
Yes.
and then we'll keep track of how many from our chapters and sections.
okay, we sent out that monthly meeting invite.
Mhm.
And in that is you can hit the link and you register for this meeting. So do you want to use that same system? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, we use the same system.
We'll use the same system. Okay.
Just let us know how many, you register yourself and we'll let us know how many. So if you have 40 there, you just have to register one and we'll add the other.
Okay. We can do
I
that.
think you can even, there's a drop down, you can actually register with yourself.
Okay, I'll do that.
2024 ASSP Regional 4 Conference is coming up down in Disney Springs. If you like to go to Disney, May 1st and 2nd. I tried to get into the Wyndham Hotel and it's full. Or you can't get in, so I'll stay at the Holiday Inn across the street.
That's just you, Tom.
I'll have construction conference. To get the Hyundai training center, where it's always been, gas. Right off the exit where the Hyundai facility is, registration to Pete South Center for Occupational Safety and Health, registration is now open. You get anything from them that says, hey, thank you for registering.
You should. And if you don't get one right away, one will come.
Okay,
They remind you of what's going on.
okay, so thank you for registering, that's all that I can get in.
No other information.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, so.
You'll get something if it don't get letters.
Company is over in Portland.
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know. We were working on it yesterday.
okay, got Governor Safety and Health Conference. Yes, it was just last week. Well, guess what's next week? I'm glad you're having fun. All for presentations are out right now. They're due. If you got an email, it said February 2nd. Friday from today. If you go to the website, it actually says February 1st. Well, I don't know when it's due is. I do February 1st. I wouldn't count on Saturday. And that's the site that you go to the register. If you want to put it on a presentation at the top. There's some training opportunities. There's other training opportunities going on through the OSHA Institute at the University of Alabama. Here's the link to go with obviously a 510 course, a 500, a 511 coming up. Free webinar coming up January 25th on record keeping. The changes to record keeping. You have 100 or more employees at your facilities around the country. And a high hazard, and that's going to be there. You will be required to send you 300 information. That change needs to be 250 or more will be required as an industry. Now it's down to 1. Not all high as industry and each subcenter for occupation taken out also has the training coming up. Audiometric testing hearing is less than 2 weeks. That's around a workshop is developed. Check your website as well for upcoming. For the section, this is going to be also be a meeting for the section. All sections and chapter will be a combined meeting for this recognition function, which we hear at the big group. Hopefully we'll have a huge next door. Obviously February 16th, I mentioned we're going to be at JSU campus. Dr. Schimmel, who's the director of safety, is going to be doing a presentation on fire safety with explosive issues out there that he's investigated. Let's say that he's also investigated fires like the Hawaii fire. So he's going to bring some of that and this presentation about it. March 15th here at APC. Joel Batiste, the area director for the Birmingham office for OSHA, will be coming here and doing this presentation and OSHA update and to talk about his views on OSHA. Wayne had sent me Kenneth Campo, who's at ASSP. He works for LE Bell Construction Company over in Peplin, Alabama. He would like to start a Northeast Alabama section. The issue is right now he's not a member of the national, at least that's what so we'll have to find some members who want to work with him to hold the Northeast section of this chapter over in the Heflin area, which is over by the Georgia Alabama border. He has a facility that has a 50-person training room that's available. So it's got plenty of room for members and friends to go see. And he's going to be following others we know. So if you're East Alabama, you'd like to enjoy and participate in one of these potential meetings, let us know. We can try to set up a Northeast Alabama section. That's all I have.
Tom,
Yes,
Tom, Mr. Wayne, can I say something?
sure.
That February meeting with JSU would be a good time for us to talk to anybody that lives over in the Anniston, Gadsden, Sylacauga area, their Pale City area, about that section continuing over there, because we're about to have to sunset that section if we don't get something moving on it right away.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to be getting together one-page invite out about this JSU meeting coming up. I'm going to try to get out all our friends and our members. I don't know, hey, we're going to be at JSU on the eastern side of the state. If you're over in that area, you can make it. Please join us there. We'll have all the information on the meeting and where the park and so forth. Sent it out several times before the actual meeting over there.
If you're interested in doing that, we would need to talk to Jerry Galanka about not taking any action for another 30 or 45 days on that. So you can let her know.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, thanks.
Again, for more of you, February 16th, if you come to AGC, you're gonna be moved into the meeting. Which hopefully have some capabilities on there to get to. It will be at the JSU campus. That's all I have. Any comments, questions, additional information? Otherwise, we'll see you in February, and hopefully everybody will show up for the march with OSHA here, so you can call them and ask your questions. Whatever else you'd like to do. Thank you for joining in.
Thanks, guys. I'll see y'all at 30 for the area meeting.
Yeah.